Welcome again. So we're going to be doing some STEM at home. How many of you kiddos out there like doing science and STEM at school? I see a couple hands raised. Don't be shy. It's like the funnest subject ever. It's reading, it's writing, it's math, it's science, all tied into one. And what's really cool about STEM is you can do it no matter what you have, no matter who you are, and whatever's around you. Everyone has access to STEM, which is one of the cool parts about it. So we are going to be doing some straw rocket investigations tonight. Again, my name there is at the bottom. I'm Catherine Connolly. I work for kind of our regional training department, and I work with 6 different districts that are located in northwestern Nevada, and Washoe County is one of our Washoe School District is one of the counties that I get to work in. So I want to make sure we all understand what STEM is, because we're going to be using all of these different words tonight, all of the different letters for this acronym. So when we're thinking about STEM, it's really this combination of all sorts of different things. So the science is all of the knowledge that we have to use. So that's the body of knowledge about the world around us. When we're looking at things, when we're asking questions, when we're thinking about why something happens, that's all part of being scientific and thinking scientifically. When we actually use that knowledge to do something, we're actually being engineers. So I'm sure a lot of you have been engineers before, you just maybe didn't know it. But when you actually use science to do something, to solve a problem or to design something, to fulfill some sort of a need, you're being an engineer. When we actually produce something at the end of that engineering kind of problem, that's considered a technology. And technology can be all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be something that has batteries, doesn't have to be something that you plug into an outlet. It can be anything that you have designed using science and using engineering to solve a problem. So we're going to be doing all of those. We're going to be getting some scientific understanding. We're going to be designing using an engineering design process, and we're going to make a technology, which is going to be our straw rockets. So here's our engineering process. So when we think of engineering, one of the things we have to think about is all the different steps that we have to use. Just like with science, there's a series of steps that engineers go through. They don't just start creating and developing things without some sort of a plan or a goal in mind. So we have a problem that we're going to try and solve tonight. Your challenge is your job. Yes, put on your pretend developer hats for a moment. Your job is to develop a toy rocket for a game similar to darts or horseshoes. How many of you have played darts or horseshoes before, or you've seen it? See a couple hands raised. So it's kind of like being able to shoot something or launch something into the middle of something. So if you have a target on the floor, you're going to try and aim for the middle of your target. And the closer you get to the middle, the more points you would earn. Your goal is to get that toy to land within about 15 feet away. If you have a hallway or if you have a good amount of space, you're going to try and get your rocket to land within kind of the center of wherever you are going to put the center of your target. It might be different for everyone depending on what the room you're in looks like, but we want it to travel consistently. So every time we launch our rockets, we want to make sure that it can land as close to the center as possible. If it's launching all over the place, we would probably need to make some adjustments to our toy, but that's our challenge for tonight. So when we're engineering, we can't just jump in and design whatever we want. We have to figure out some of the different things that might control how our toy is going to fly or how it's going to move. And that's what we're going to do first. So we have to think about what we want our toy rocket to do, or our straw rocket. We want it to travel 5 meters, and 5 meters is about 15 feet. So imagine maybe one of your parents lying down and maybe 3 parents lying down on the ground. About that distance is how far we want it to travel. And we want it to be consistent. So we want it to be able to travel that far almost every single time. We don't want it to fly all over the place. And if we can do that, we'll consider ourselves successful. We also have to think about some of the constraints of the challenge. So some of the things that might limit what we have access to. One of the things are the materials, and hopefully all of you got some materials. They're pretty simple. They're basic materials. And the time that we have, because we only have a little bit of time to work with this, about 45, 50 minutes or so, to make sure that we have all of the science and engineering that we need to develop the best toy that we can. Some of the variables we're going to be thinking about how we can make our toy rocket travel best is the length of the straw. What length allows our straw rocket to travel the best. What weight, how much weight do we add to our straw to make it travel really well? And if we can add fins to it to make it travel in a straight path as well. So we're going to test those 3 different things. And those 3 things are going to be the science and the math part of STEM. Okay, every time we build a toy rocket or a straw rocket, it's going to be kind of done the same way because we're going to build several of them. That way we can combine all of the different things into our final product. So we're going to be building several different rockets, and hopefully you have enough straws to be able to build several. So I have a little video and I'll let you watch what it looks like first, and then we'll build a couple together because we're going to do a couple different things first. But when we build our toy rocket, it's going to look like this. This is how you're going to do it. So you'll take your straw, one of your colorful straws, and you're going to fold that top part over. That way the air can't escape from one side. And once you fold it over, you're going to tape around it to hold it down. And that is going to be the base of our straw rocket for all of the different designs we're going to make. We will add different things to it, but that's going to be the base for it. Make sure I pause it. All right. So the first one we're going to test is going to be the different length. So when we're testing different variables, we want to make sure we only change one thing at a time. So you are going to decide which length of straws you want to test. They can be any length you want. These are 3 that I had cut, and I made a really, really short one. I made kind of a middle-sized one, and then one pretty much the full length of the straw. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And you're going to need these things. So you're going to need one of your wrapped straws. And this is where this activity came from. How many of you have unwrapped a straw before? Hopefully not at a restaurant or something like that. But then you blow the wrapper off of it and you see how far the wrapper flies, right? And if you've seen that before, you'll see that the wrapper doesn't travel straight. It kind of goes all over the place. We want to try and make something kind of the same as that straw wrapper, but it'll travel in a straight distance rather than kind of all over the place. So the one that had the wrapper on it is going to be the one that you launch your straw off of. So you're not going to fold that one over. That one stays open and straight so that you can launch the straw off of that one. So the clear straw, the one that was wrapped, is the one that you're going to launch off of. Take one of your other straws, though, pick a colored straw, and that's going to be the one that's going to be our straw rocket first. So you get to decide which size or which length you want. And you can decide, or you can change the length, where's my tape, in 2 different ways. You can either cut the straw if you want. You don't have to, but if you want to cut the straw, you can cut it and it'll be shorter, right? Or you can just fold more of your straw over. So if I want it to be a little bit shorter, I might fold more of it over and tape it shut there. But the big idea is that that fold at the top doesn't allow any air to move through it. So if you have siblings, if you have brothers or sisters, maybe each of you choose a different size, a different length of straw. That way you can compare the results with each other. But you're going to build your first rocket, and we're going to see how the different lengths affect how it moves. And I have blue tape just for the sake of being able to hopefully see it a little bit better. But you're going to build your first rocket. So again, you kind of fold it over and tape the folded part. And that's your first rocket. Once you have that part done, you're going to put your clear straw inside your other one. So now they're inside of each other. And then you're going to see how far it goes. So if you pick a space, maybe where you can't get it stuck in anything, or you're not going to launch it at anyone, right? Safety first. See how far you can get your straw to travel. And sometimes it helps. Mine just did this. Let me get it again. If you push your straw, like mine's pink, if you push it onto that clear straw too much, it kind of gets stuck in the crease at the top. So you might have to pull it off a little bit just so it's loose. But you're going to see how far it traveled. And if you can consistently get it to travel that far every time. So all of you who are trying it out there, give it a try. See if you can make a couple different sizes, a couple different lengths, a short and a long. And then try and think about, as you're doing that, which one is traveling better? And you get to decide what better means. So if you had to choose one of those straws, a long or a short, which would you choose? Which one travels better? And again, kind of pull if it's the colored straw. Oh, I saw a couple launching. Make sure it doesn't get scrunched into that kind of pinched part of the colored straw. So I'll give you a couple minutes to try that. Feel free if you have anything you want to add, or if you have observed anything, if you notice anything while you are building your rocket or launching your rocket, feel free to let us know. Or if you want to hold it up to the camera, I can see all of your amazing straw rockets so far. See a couple of them. And while you're doing that, because I know some of you are still building your rockets, it looks like, what's really cool about this, so this is part of our building our science knowledge, is really as scientists, what you're doing right now is you're figuring out how something works and why it works. Scientists don't tend to use the scientific method that we are traditionally taught a lot of the time. Scientists' jobs tend to be figuring out why something happens, and that can be done in a whole bunch of different ways. So what you're doing now is figuring out why something happens and under what conditions that something happens. So maybe the short straw travels farther, or maybe the long straw travels farther, but you're thinking about why that's happening, and that's part of our science knowledge that we're building right now. I see straws launching, looks good. So remember, with this part of our investigation, we are only changing one thing. We're changing the length of our straw rocket. Oh, that's a cool one. You've got a twisted, like a bendy straw. What's really cool, if you get really creative, you can attach a water bottle to the end and make it like a stomp rocket almost, where you slam on it and it'll launch your straw too. All right, about 10 more seconds. And then we'll think about what we just did and what the results are. All right. Oops, wrong thing. All right. So hopefully you got to see how it travels and you got to think about what travels better. Does a longer straw length travel better than a shorter straw length? Or does a short one travel better than a long one? So we're thinking in kind of big ideas. We don't have to be super specific with our measurements right now, because our big idea is what travels better, long or short. Anyone want to share if a long or a short travels better? I see some hand raised. Go ahead if you want to say something. You can either type it in the chat or you can unmute yourself.
This one went the farthest.
You're off mute. You can talk.
Oh, this one, it went the farthest.
So is that your long one or your
Yeah.
short one? Your long one traveled farthest. Anyone else have some ideas?
Huh?
Mine is short and it's long and
It went far.
what?
It went far.
And it went really far.
Great observation. So I've heard that long straws travel the farthest. Yes.
What about your big one? Short.
My one went farther than a normal long one because of the extra air.
Oh, that's cool. So now you're starting to think about some other things that may add to the movement of our straw rockets, right? So again, you're being a scientist. That's exactly what scientists do, is they think about why something's happening. Okay, so we're going to make another one this time. I'm going to share my screen and go back. to our next part. So we just thought about length, how length might affect or change how our straw rockets move. And it seems to be that a longer straw, especially like the fuller length straws rather than my little one that's 2 or 3 inches, tend to travel better. And this, maybe. So we thought about the short or the long. And what's nice about science is we don't always have to use numbers. Sometimes just explaining something is good enough, that longer ones travel farther than shorter ones. This was my son doing it. He's 6 years old, so he might be around the same age as you. And so this was his. And his went all kind of crazy. So then we had to start thinking about how we could change. Oh, that one didn't go anywhere. But how we could change that motion so that it travels as straight as possible. So when I did it with my kiddo, we did kind of the same thing that you're all doing at home as well, because we do science at home too, right? Everyone should be doing science all the time. Don't play again. Okay. So this time we're going to do another one, but you're going to need a new straw for this one. And 2 new straws if you have 2 of them. If you only have one, again, maybe if you're with your brothers or your sisters, one of you can do each of these different ones, but we're going to add weight to our rocket this time. So you're going to need another straw, one of the colorful ones. You can use the clear launching straw that you already had, but you'll need another colorful one. You'll need some of the clay that hopefully you had in your bags. Right? And that's what our weight is going to be. Clay is pretty heavy, at least for the size of it. And you're going to need this little wooden peg. So there should have been a little kind of something that you would normally hang your jackets on or something like that. It was a little wooden peg. Here, I'll stop sharing so you can see this part. So you should have had a little wooden peg that kind of looks like this. And this is what we're going to use to shove the clay into the end of our straw. So if you don't have one of these clay or one of these wooden pieces, if I didn't get one in your bag, that's okay. We can make it work without it. But here's how you're going to do this. You're going to take your clay. I just lost my little wooden peg. It rolled off. And you are going to shove the top of your straw into the clay. And clay is kind of sticky, so that when I pull it out, and you can kind of see it in the straw, there's a little bit of clay shoved into the end of the straw. So that's how we're going to add weight to it. So we're only going to add weight to the end of our straw. We are still, just like before, we are still going to fold it over and tape it, but now there's a bunch more weight in the end of our straw. You can, because that clay gets to be kind of close to the end of the straw, if you want to take that wooden peg, you can use that to kind of shove that clay in a little bit, just so it's a little bit farther and it doesn't go flying out the end. But same thing as before, once you put your little bit of clay in the end, so you just poke the straw in, pull it out, and you should have a little bit of clay in there. You're going to fold it over and tape it down, tape it shut again, so that the air doesn't go all the way through the straw and you don't launch the clay out the end, because that wouldn't be good either. So once you've added your clay, same thing, you're just going to tape it shut. Oops. And your rocket should look almost exactly the same, but now you can tell that compared to your other one, it's a little bit heavier. The balance is different. So now, if you have your straw from the last one, and they're approximately the same size, mine are about an inch and a half different in size. But if you launch both of them, you can compare how does it move now if you have one that does not have any weight in it compared to one that does have weight in it. So take a couple minutes, and same thing, you're going to put your launching straw inside each of your other straws and launch them and see if they move differently, if the one with weight moves differently than the one without weight. And you should be able to see a fairly big difference with the weighted one.
You put the clay in the big straw or the small straw?
big straw? Good question. Thank you for asking. Go ahead and unmute yourself. If you have something you want to add in, go ahead and unmute yourself.
When I shot the straw with clay in it, it went shorter. And this one, basically, this one was here and this one was here,
You
but
can't see it, honey. You have to hold it up. Sorry.
Wow. Oh, it's
This-
fine.
here and this one was over here, but it
Oh,
split,
wow.
so it went ahead because we
Oh.
got a slippery hallway.
Oh, interesting. Yes. What else do we have?
When I was trying to blow this really hard, it went so far.
Did it go really far?
And it went all the way to the end of the hallway.
Wow, that's really far. Pretty cool. So same thing, as you're launching them, think about what's true. Think about why your one with weight or without weight moves differently. And we're going to try and make some more big ideas about what works best. Okay, does anyone need more time? I don't see any hands up. Okay, she knows. Okay, what do we have? What else do you want to add to our conversation? Anyone? I see one hand raised. What'd you figure out?
I figured out it would go more down than up.
Oh, that's a really good observation. So when it was moving, it went kind of down rather than up?
Like it didn't go like very straight or very far.
Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think that happened?
Because it had more weight.
Because it had more weight. And what's pulling the weight down? What force?
The clay.
The clay, and gravity pulls it down more, right? Or it doesn't pull it down more, but it pulls it down, all of the weight in there. Yeah, all of that clay changes how it moves. What else did you figure out while you were doing that? Anyone else?
If you add a lot of clay, it would go not more farther. It would go like a short distance.
So having a lot of clay makes it go shorter, right?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Anything else?
No.
Okay, what about some of our other kids out there? Anything else you figured out? I heard somebody say about halfway through that maybe I was blowing harder, forcing more air in through it, right? Yeah. And that would also make it move differently, right? Do you want to say anything about that?
That the more pressure of air said was me.
Yeah, so more pressure is going to change how it moves as well, right? So we have another variable we have to kind of think about, making sure we blow in the same type of way so it moves the same. What else? Yes,
Think
I see it.
and why it went farther with the more pressure is because I think the more pressure you add, the more force.
Yeah, that's a great observation. What else? I see your hand raised in the back.
Thank you.
When my pink one, when I gave it a little time, when I tested out before the time went out, it went really super far 2 times.
Cool.
And the green
Yes,
really far.
that's awesome. What else?
I made my clay one smaller than the regular one, and it went farther too.
Okay, great. So what I really like is that we have a whole bunch of different ideas about how your rockets are moving and why they might be moving like that. Do you think scientists always agree all the time on why things happen? Probably not. Actually, most of the time they don't. They collect information in different ways, and sometimes that makes them think about why things are happening differently, which is part of the unique part of science. And you are all getting to decide what you think is better or worse when we're thinking about its movement, right? So we have one more thing that we are going to test before we build our final product and see if we can get it to travel 15 feet. Let me go back. Okay, so we tested how adding weight to the nose, the tip of our rocket, changes its movement. We talked about how they move with weight or with no weight added to them. And you don't have to use clay. There are, of course, other things that you could always add to the tip of your rocket. Sometimes just adding more paper in there might make a difference, or changing where that clay is added to the straw will change how it moves as well. So there's lots of different ways to play with that. Oh, there was my son doing it again, but you all did a really good job testing, so we won't watch unless I can't get past. Okay, I think this is the most fun of the 3 different things we're testing. So this time we're gonna add fins. So in your bags, you should have gotten little index tabs, and they're really used to put on like folders or pieces of paper when you're trying to sort all of your stuff. And I'll show you my little video of how I put it together first, but you're gonna need 3 of those little kind of sticky tabs. And if you can see my camera, even though I'm sharing my screen, I'll stop sharing in a moment. They look like this. And there's 2 little stickers on the bottom of them, which makes it really easy to add to our straws. But I'll show you my video first of how we put them on. And you're gonna need another straw again, or you can adapt. You can change one of the straws you've already used. So we have our rocket that's already taped on the top. And we just take these little tabs. And when you take the sticky backing off, or the backing off of them, it's just like a sticker, and you just stick it right to your straw. So I did that with 3 of my little tabs, and the color doesn't matter. You can use whatever color you want. And you try and get them so they're evenly placed around your straw, so they're not all on one side. So it's almost like a triangle or something if you were to connect them. So they're evenly distributed or separated around your straw. And you'll notice when you look at it in its final product, or the final form of it, hopefully I put it down, there we go, that on, oops, I'll do another one. It is on the opposite side than the side you taped shut. So if I use my green straw, I taped it shut over here. My little fins are gonna go on the opposite side. We want them to go on the bottom of the rocket. So if our rocket was going to go straight up, they would be at the bottom. So these are the little tabs that you should hopefully have. And if you ever do this at home, or with your friends or whatever, you don't need these sticky tabs, right? If you have some tape and just a little bit of paper, it works just the same. These are just really easy because they already have little sticky adhesives on them. So you just take the backings off. And I hold them apart a little bit with my hands, but then you just attach them, you just stick them on. So there's one of them, and you try and space them out. If you want to try it with more fins, you're welcome to do so. I found 3 fit pretty well on the straw, but if you want to use more than 3, it's your rocket, go for it. Or if you only want to use 2, or if you only want to use 1, you get to decide how it looks right now. And your job is the same as before. You want to think about how it moves differently now that you've added fins to it. And if the fins help it go kind of straight, or if they don't even make a difference, or if the added weight to it changes, you're trying to think about why it moves the way it does now that we've added fins. And once you have your fins on there, same thing, put your launching straw in and see if you can get it to travel even farther. So I'll give you a few minutes to try and test that out and see how that changes. Other things that work well for fins are just Post-it notes, the sticky notes that are pretty small. They're like 2 inches. Those work really well also because they're sticky on one little part and then it's just a paper side on the other part. But you want to launch it and see if you can see any differences between how that one travels with fins and one that does not have fins travels. And I'll put a few minutes on my timer. Looking good. I see a few of them are being built. See, some of you are still building. Do we need a little bit more time before we start talking? Okay, I'll give you, I see a couple people are still working. Oops, wrong button. I'll give you a couple more minutes. Oh, there's double fins. That looks cool. There's like 2 different spots. That's awesome. So while you're building for the next couple of minutes and testing them out, rocket science, or the science behind the rockets that you're using, even these simple straw rockets, are things that happen even in northern Nevada. We have lots of aerospace engineering companies around us that launch kind of rockets into space already, which is pretty cool. This is one of the careers that even in our area of Nevada that you could potentially think about getting if you like doing this sort of a thing. We also, even when you go up to the university, there's NASA goes up there a lot of the time and helps some of the engineers up there when they're doing some of their drone trainings and some of their other types of trainings with the engineering department up there. So even as you're thinking about what you want to do as an adult, there's lots of stuff that you can do in this kind of science. Is very similar to what they get to do in real life, which is pretty cool. I see some of you disappearing to go get straws every now and again, which is pretty fun. Okay, when you're ready to add to our conversation or have anything else to say, you can unmute yourself and share your ideas with us. If your hand is raised, whoever turns off their mute first gets to go. All right.
Go ahead, Lily.
So when I was trying to blow these, it went like, and then it landed into the ground.
Wow.
So it went up, and then shoo, it's down.
Wow. Pretty cool.
Mhm.
What else? Anyone else? Yeah.
When I added four fins,
Yeah.
and it went much farther
So
Then-
4 works better.
with the clay.
Oh, oops, there's my timer.
Because it had more force with the wind going through,
Yeah.
going over and under
What? We're done making them sound.
the sails.
Oh, I like that. That's a good description of what was happening. So 4 fins worked well. Yes, I see another hand raised.
I added these many, and they were uneven, so I made a ton.
That's a really good observation. When your fins weren't even on your straw, it made it move, it made it turn.
Mhm.
Oh, great observation. Yes.
When you use the bendy straw, like this one, it kind of made it just not really go far, like 2 feet.
Yeah. So how the straw, the bend in it kind of changes the direction the air can move, right?
Yeah,
It puts
because,
some
like,
resistance.
How heavy the straw is.
Right. And as we keep adding things, I'm sure all of you have noticed that as we add more and more stuff to it, you have to have more and more air to force it off your straw, right? To make it move the same. So there are some trade-offs when we add things, it changes how it's going to move. Okay. We're coming down to our last 10 minutes. So we've done a few things. We've tested different variables and we've kind of done the science part of our engineering. And even though we're building things right now, we're still learning about all of the things, all of the principles, all of the rules that make our straw move in a certain way. So that's the science part of what we've been doing. Now that you've kind of got an idea of how your rocket's going to move as you add these different variables. So if it's a long straw or a short straw, I don't want to show you that part again. Let me get to my right slide. There we go. So we've tested these different variables, these different things that are going to change how our rocket moves. What your job now is to do the engineering part. So we did the science. We figured out the short or long work better, and you get to decide what better means. Does it work better if we add clay to the nose or not? And then does it work better? Does it fly better if we add fins or without? So you get to design your final product, your final engineering technology, your final piece of straw rocket. And you're going to decide which of those variables you want to add to it. So your job now is to create your final rocket that has all of those variables combined into one. So we're using that science that you just figured out, all of those observations that you made, and you're going to design a technology, your final straw rocket, that has all of the different components that you want to add to it. Remember your goal, and I don't remember if I put this on the next page. No, I didn't. Your goal is to make it travel kind of the same distance every time. And I put 15 feet. If you don't have 15 feet, that's fine. Maybe you only have 5 feet, but can you make it travel the same distance every time? And if you put a target on the ground, if you put your shoe on the ground or something else on the ground, a book, can you hit the book every time from the same place? So that's what we're trying to do with our consistency, is try and hit the same place every time. Because we're pretending that we're designing a toy that would be like darts or like horseshoes. And the closer you get to that target, the more points you would ultimately get. So now you're going to be the engineering. Let's take the next couple of minutes and let's see your final product. And then I want to see if anyone adds clay. I want to see how many fins you add and if you're using a short or a long straw. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, just let me know, because sometimes I talk a whole lot and it doesn't actually make sense. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And once you're ready, once you're happy with your final product and you think it does the best job it possibly can, hold it up and let me see what you got. So this is the point that you change all the science knowledge into the engineering piece, and you're developing a technology. And your straw rocket right now is your piece of technology. And again, our technology doesn't have to have batteries, doesn't have to have a plug or be electronic. It's something that was designed by a human brain to solve a problem or meet some sort of a need. And the materials we use tonight are pretty simple to find for the most part. They're not too complicated. Again, you can make changes if you don't have the little fins, the little sticky fins or the sticky tabs. You can find other things that would work just as well. But remember, science and engineering can be done all the time. It's not something that's only for school. Every time you go out and start looking at rocks or looking at animals that might live in your yard or out your window or figuring out anything about the world around you, that's what science is all about. And there's lots of different ways to do that, even if you don't have a bunch of materials. And there's even cooler stuff if you can just get really close down to the ground, looking at ants. I don't know how many of you like looking at bugs and ants in the spring and summer. It's a great way to learn about what's in your backyard or what's out in the playground or whatever is occurring and why those ants might be there or whatever other bugs are there, right? Why certain plants grow in certain places. And all of that helps us understand what's going on around us and helps us engineer new technologies that will help humanity. Who's got their final design? I know a few of you are still working. All right. And you want to show me yours? I see a couple hands raised. If you want to tell me about your design or show it to us, let me know. And go ahead.
So what I did is I used both of my straws and I used some tape to wrap the two straws together, and I used this to try to blow them, and I was doing and it didn't work.
That's okay.
It's too much.
Things don't always work the first time. I love that you got so creative with that. Science is very creative.
And it's too much weight, so it just flew on the ground.
Oh, but you could fix that because you just told me what you think the problem is, right? So you figured out why it might not work as good because there was too much weight. That's a really good observation that you made. And that's something that you could easily fix. Anyone else have a design? Yes. I know none of you can see who I'm looking at, and I don't know all of your names. So just go
This
ahead.
is
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
Can you see it? It's
I
from the last design, but I just added a little plate.
How does it move? Does it work good?
No, it just goes fall like a couple inches.
Oh, so maybe there's too much weight on there and you have to blow really hard to get it to move. Anyone else? I think we have time for maybe one more. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to make one of my straws shorter, and
Like tiny short.
A real short little one, huh?
yeah,
Cool. Oh, that one really, I can see that one go fast.
and then I'm going to test the other half
Cool.
fins.
Awesome.
I think I know.
Those look great. So we are almost out of time. And I'm so glad that you could all join us tonight for a little bit. Thank you for spending the last hour with me and building some straw rockets. And I hope that you all go out and find some more fun things to be able to explore around you and to design and to think about. But thank you all for joining me.